So guys, that will be a male cricket chirping, which is a sign of breeding activity. Now, obviously, I don't really, it's difficult to actually tell the lifespan of a cricket or any insect that goes in here. That's been reared in the bug hotel. So what I do is I buy my bugs, so crickets, dubias, locusts, mealworm, waxworm, calciworms, morio worms. I buy them all from a pet shop, and then I add the crickets, the locusts, the dubia roaches and the mealworms into a tub which has like a sort of an organic substrate in it, which is like teeming with springtails and isopods, because it's been kind of settling for, establishing for about, I would say at least 12 months, if not more, 18 months maybe. So it's a pretty well established bug hotel now, and so I put my insects in there, but I don't put the waxworms in, and I don't put the calciworms in. The calciworms, well, the reason being is because they turn to moths or flies, and I don't want to be opening the lid and then having a load of flies fly out with there and flying in my room. So that's why I keep those separate. And then, so they're in there for some time, and then they eat off some like herb leaves, parsley leaves, potato peel, apple peel, carrot peel, that sort of thing goes into the bug hotel, and they eat off that, and then once they've got loaded, they go straight into the terrarium. Obviously not all at once, obviously, but when it sort of comes to around sort of feeding time, which isn't on a set schedule, it is sort of when Mr. Jinx feels like eating. And as his keeper now, I've got to that stage where I kind of just know by the look of his face, those eyes, I kind of know if he's kind of hungry or not. You kind of just know, yeah. So I don't like monitor feeding the same way as I did when he was in quarantine and when he first went into this enclosure, yeah, because the quarantine setup was totally different to this. It was much more basic. There was a few enrichment items in there, some plastic plants, some logs. I think he had one log hide and a humid hide and a cool hide, and and then I would tongue feed him with his food items from a baby. So, but now I don't do that. And so what happens is the insects, there is a soldier fly just there. The insects that get put into this enclosure are loosely put in. I just scatter a bunch in. And when was the last time I did that? I think it was probably about, I put a bunch in, quite a sort of a handful of a mixture of calciworms, waxworms, some locusts, some crickets, a couple of dubias, some isopods, I just sort of scattered them all in, big bunch, and then I'll leave them do their thing for at least a couple of weeks or so. And Mr. Jinx is totally independent at feeding and hunting himself. He can, sometimes, like if I'm videoing, he sometimes pops out and then he'll wander around, and then I see him chomping on a locust, and before I've even noticed the locust being there, so he'll like spot things before, my own eyes. So he's sharp. He kind of knows what he's doing. He's got used to this environment now, so he's kind of like trained to exhibit his kind of natural wildlife hunting skills, I guess. So anyway, going back to this little cricket, so the singing is a sign that he's after a female, and there could well be breeding activity going on there with the crickets. Okay, this soldier fly larvae has turned, not larvae, sorry, this soldier fly has pupated from a calciworm, and calciworms are a good snack for leopard geckos and other reptiles. But if they don't get eaten, they'll burrow into the substrate and then eventually pupate into these flies. And the lizard can eat them as a fly if he can catch them. But if there's other sort of opportunities like crickets, mealworms, that sort of thing, he's more likely to go for them than the fly. But he will, if he's super hungry, eat the fly. They're opportunistic insectivores, leopard geckos. So they'll, even in the wild, they'll eat scorpions, centipedes, even small rodents like small baby mice, even other geckos they've been known to eat in the wild. They can even eat their own hatchlings. Yeah, they're quite a rugged species, and it's a rough environment in the wild for them. So when leopard geckos hatch, they're not kind of spoon-fed by a mother. The mothers lay their eggs, and then they leave them, and then they hatch, and then they're left to their own devices. Obviously, that's not, been the case here. But basically, it's good not to kind of mollycoddle and just allow them to kind of explore and, exhibit their natural instincts. Let them be free, kind of thing. But obviously within the safety of the enclosure, and having a large enough enclosure for them to, exhibit their natural behaviours as much as possible. Okay. So what made me go for this type of enclosure? Well, I've always been a bit of a freak with nature. I've always had a love for nature. Since a young kid, I've always been fascinated in wildlife and how, plants and things like that. And ecology, how nature works, the environment, that sort of thing, yeah. So, and I've got a bit of a creative streak in me as well. So when it came to kind of thinking of a habitat for my gecko, this sort of naturalistic and creative streaks kind of came together and created this. And the research into their wild habitat came later, really. And so what this is now was different to the original setup. Although the original setup was bioactive, I prefer to use the term ecological because I think personally that is a more broader term to define the type of setup that that this is, and the setups that go under the sort of bioactive umbrella. I prefer to use the term ecological because anyway, I won't go into that now, but yeah, so it kind of a blend of the natural flair and the creative flair, with an interest in researching their wild habitat and then tweaking the setup to kind of coincide with their kind of habitat in the wild in Pakistan. So yeah, so that's kind of what led me to this, really, researching plants. So Googling, plants in the Potwar Plateau, Pakistan, Soon Valley. Leopard geckos are widespread across Pakistan. So I just researched plants. Not all of these plants are from that region or native to that region, but from going on a plant database, there's a cricket just moving around just over there, and he may just, yeah, he's just by there. So I'm just gonna close that. So yeah, so from researching plants, if I couldn't find the exact species available in the garden centre that grew in their wild habitat, I would just get their close family relative. For example, there's lots of different types of aloes. So if there wasn't an aloe vera available, which they are commonly available and they do grow in Pakistan. What's another example? Sedum. So there might be a particular type of sedum that grows in Pakistan but is not available in garden centres. So the closest one I got, which suited terrarium, well, it was a bit of a trial for terrarium conditions, because normally it grows in the wild, it grows on coastal cliffs, so it's quite hardy. And it's this plant here, which is a sedum called Cola. That is not native to Pakistan, it's native to Japan. But there are loads, like sedum is a massive, massive family of plants. So that kind of was just, as close as to one that you would find in their wild habitat. And it seems to be doing well. It's been in there now for, well, since, I don't know, was it last summer? I think I put it in there. So it's coming up, it's nearly 12 months and it's still alive and it's doing well. I cut it back in November and it's still growing back. This asparagus fern is also doing really well. So yeah. So, oh, here he is. Look, he's popping out. So he's look at him. He's looking at something there now. He has seen something and he's going to go and catch it. Yeah, he's seen something. I can now see it moving. So what it is, there's a bug underneath like a piece of stone or leaf, and it's like moving, and he's had it, and it's a dubia cockroach. He's got it. So right, so there we go, guys. I didn't even know that was there. He did. He spotted it, and look, he's had it. And look how healthy he's looking. He's a hell of a guy. He looks like he's coming into shed, judging by the colour of him. It's just amazing to watch him. Really is. I could spend hours and hours doing this, just watching him. So there we are. And that insect that he's just eaten will probably keep him going for about a week. So, yeah, he's doing well. Alright guys, over and out.